Hey everyone, this week I've been driving this 2020 Volkswagen Atlas Cross Sport. This is basically a 5-passenger version of the 3-row Atlas that came out for 2018. This vehicle is new for 2020. You can basically think of it as what the Honda Passport is to the Pilot. So the Atlas is a 3-row family SUV with room for up to 7 passengers. This thing is a 2-row family SUV with room for up to 5 passengers. Basically, the idea here is that it takes a lot of money to develop a vehicle from the ground up. So when an automaker comes out with something like a 3-row family crossover, that vehicle is probably only going to appeal to people who need 3 rows of seats, especially given that these 3-row crossovers are kind of viewed as minivan alternatives. So that means that people who don't need 3 rows of seats or don't have kids probably aren't going to buy a 3-row crossover. So how do you get the most out of your investment into a 3-row crossover platform? You chop a little bit off the back, take out the 3rd row, give it a sportier roofline, and then market it to people using the word sport as a way to convey that it isn't just a family car. Either way though, the Cross Sport here isn't anything revolutionary, but I gotta say, I kind of like it. Volkswagen's design language is pretty crisp and clean and minimalist. The exterior of this thing is inoffensive. The interior is somewhat stark and simple, but at the same time, it's functional. It's industrial feeling, and I tend to like that. That's a matter of personal preference though, so yeah, let's just do a tour of the Atlas Cross Sport here. And it's Cross Sport. So we'll see how many times I say Sport Cross. Starting up front, the Atlas has a really blocky front end. So when the 7-passenger Atlas came out for the 2018 model year, it had a different front end than this, and Volkswagen has taken the opportunity of rolling out the Cross Sport here to also introduce the facelifted Atlas styling. So Cross Sport is a 2020 model, but the 2021 model year Atlas, again, that's the 3-row Atlas, will have this styling as well. Here's VW's new logo. It's not new. I mean, it's the same as it's always been, but they modernized it. The lines are a little bit skinnier. They no longer use blue. And then one thing I noticed is that the W no longer connects with this outer ring here. Front camera really sticks out. And then another thing I noticed, they've actually branded their headlights IQ Light. So this is an SEL V6 all-wheel drive model. It's not an R-Line. The R-Line would come with different wheels than this, but what the R-Line is really just an appearance package. No performance enhancements to the R-Line. It's just bigger wheels. These are 20-inch wheels, so they're still pretty big. Something I really like. I've always liked Volkswagen's push-to-release fuel door design, but something I noticed about this one, okay, so you push to release it, it opens, but then when you close it, typically with these you have to, go like that. But on this, when you just flick it closed, it actually shuts itself so you don't have to do anything. And you hardly even have to press it that hard. Yeah, didn't do it there, but yeah, if you just press it a little bit harder, it'll close itself entirely and you don't have to push to click it closed. This one has a tow hitch, which is nice, and it has provisions for a hookup there. This is just a block-off plate, but I imagine you could connect a 7-pin hookup outlet pretty easily there. But this is nice for a mountain bike rack at the very least. These look like exhaust pipes, but they are not exhaust pipes. It's just plastic in there. Let's see. Yep, here's your so this thing actually has dual exhaust. That's really weird, but they've downplayed it. So if they wanted to, they could have just sent these exhaust tips out the rear right here and it would have given this thing a little more aggression, but no, they've just hidden them under there. That is really weird. I can understand doing that for a vehicle that just has a dinky little single outlet exhaust, but it's very odd to hide dual exhaust. Power tailgate, par for the course. Pretty big cargo hold on this thing. You give up a little bit of cargo volume because of the angle of this area back here. Again, because on the regular Atlas it goes like that, but still pretty large, and that is one of the benefit of these shrunken family crossovers. This has these Muddy Buddy by WeatherTech rubber mats in it. So there's a big one covering the cargo floor here. And then what's nice is that they actually stick on via Velcro onto the second row seat backs. So when you put those down, you've got a cargo floor that is entirely covered in rubber matting. Not much else back here. 12-volt outlet. I think there would be a cargo cover, but they never actually include the cargo cover with these press liners. I think because they're afraid people are gonna stick it in their garage and then forget about it. But hooks, 12-volt, couple little lights. That's about it. Passive keyless entry is nice, so the key is in my pocket, so locks the car, power folding mirrors, unlock the car. Simple, easy to use, you don't have to press it too hard. A couple loaners I've had recently, you've had to actually apply pressure to this touch sensor on the door to lock the car, but with the Atlas, really easy. Good design right there. Moving on to the interior, we'll start by starting it up. This is a fairly screen-heavy interior. This is nice because it's a good distance from me as the driver. I don't have to lean forward to use the touchscreen, and it is only a touchscreen. This just controls drive modes, so you don't have a secondary means of controlling the infotainment screen, but it's nice because it's close enough that you don't have to reach too hard. Fully digital gauge cluster, so the only things that aren't digital is your temperature readout here and then a fuel gauge right here, but this is all digital, and you can actually control stuff via the steering wheel here. Steering wheel is really nice. The buttons feel good. Here's your heated steering wheel button here. Cruise control is on the steering wheel. VW used to use a third stock for its cruise control, but not anymore. They've got it on the steering wheel now. Volume, and then track forward and back button over here. One thing that's missing from this are paddle shifters. Volkswagen tends to kind of have a sportier character than your average vehicle. So I'm surprised that, especially on this $48,000 SEL model, that they don't include paddle shifters. I know Volkswagen in the past has limited paddle shifters to their R-Line trim levels. I'm not sure if that's the case with the Cross Sport here, but either way, I've grabbed for paddle shifters pretty much every time I've driven this thing this week. I kind of miss having them there. One other cool thing about the infotainment screen here, this thing actually has a sensor in the bottom of the screen that can sense anytime you bring your hand to the screen. So, see that? Anytime you bring your hand up to the screen, these buttons appear here, and you can select them when your hand is near the screen. You take your hand away, and they disappear, which gives you a little more real estate. Is that necessary? No, but kind of neat. One other neat thing, in this vehicle, you can turn on the heated seats and the ventilation at the same time. It's nice that they have buttons for the heated and ventilated seats. This whole HVAC layout is pretty nice, pretty intuitive. It's on high right now. One thing we noticed is if you try to turn it down really quickly, it doesn't go very fast. But when you turn it down slowly, it goes down like you'd expect. Kind of weird. I'm not sure what the benefit is there. See what I mean? A little bit of storage up here, some storage ahead of the shifter. Here you've got two USB-A ports, an aux port, and then a 12-volt outlet there. Center console box is big enough. I still think it could be a little deeper. I mean, I don't know what could be underneath here that kept them from making it, I don't know, 6 inches deeper even. But still, a lot of real estate that way. Just isn't super deep. Another USB port in the box here. Not another 12-volt outlet. That's a little surprising. Cup holders, electronic parking brake. Here's your different drive modes. So you press the button in the middle, and that brings up your options. Looks like under normal, you've got technically 4 different sub modes. You've got Eco, Sport, Custom, in addition to normal. And then your actual like off-road, low traction modes are snow, off-road, and off-road custom. And then you've got a button for your 360-degree camera system. So there's a top-down view, and this also controls the parking sensors, and then this thing has a feature where it will park itself. VW has usually had really good button quality and really high-end touch points, but I'm noticing that that's a little bit lacking in these buttons right here. You see how they're wiggling around? Up top, lights, SOS buttons, big panoramic sunroof. Let's just put the shade back. Oh, I guess it's gonna open. Oh, so there's the button for the shade. It's not really intuitive to have them this far apart, let alone having them be completely different types of buttons. That could be better. Anyway, there's your look with the sunroof open and the shade all the way back. And there's how things look with the shade back and the glass closed. This one's a little more tinted than others. Enough for the front. Altogether, good design. Touch points are good. You've got 4 one-touch power up and down windows. Decent storage in the doors. Headlights are controlled right there. Stocks are a really nice design. There's this little contour in the turn signal and windshield wiper stocks that your finger can just rest right there. It's just the little things that VW is pretty good at. And these turn signal stocks are one of those things. They even have a couple different surfaces there in the plastic. So this is like a matte surface, and then this is a gloss surface. VW customers are people who appreciate things like that. Okay, finally, I think we're done with the front area here. Let's go check out the back seat. Oh, that's one other thing. Anytime you open the door with the engine running, you get this obnoxious beeping. I mean, what is with that? No other car does that. It's really, really obnoxious. Oh, one other thing. There's a little storage cubby to the left of the steering column here. Okay, the back seat in the Atlas Cross Sport is absolutely massive. So I read that they actually added 2 inches of legroom compared to the regular Atlas. And I think that's because in the regular Atlas, they've got to preserve a little bit of third row legroom. But since there's no third row in this vehicle, they can eat into that cargo area a little bit and give the second row passengers even more space. I mean, this is almost full-size truck levels of second row legroom. Tons of space right there. Heated second row. Other than that, 2 USB ports. This is a little funky. 3-prong outlet right there. What is it? 115 volt AC inverter. Nice to have. That door is just not a design that I've ever seen in another vehicle. Center armrest has this cup holder in it, and this is something funky that VW does. So you've got space for normal size cups, and then you've also got a space here for like a Red Bull sized can. Another smart thing, this thing has integrated window shades, and they use a connection method that I've never actually seen in a vehicle before, and it's really smart. They usually maybe have a connection hook here and a connection hook here, but the Atlas just has one connection point, and it's super easy to clip in. There you go. I mean, it was so easy there that I wasn't sure I had it, but yeah, that's all it is. So really easy to put these shades up and take them down. I appreciate little design elements like that. Volkswagen, like I said, tends to get those right. Still get overhead grab handles despite the panoramic sunroof. A lot of times you lose these when you get a panoramic roof. Lights right there. The shade is like 95, 98% opaque. So 2 to 5% of light gets through. Basically blocks it out entirely, so that's cool. One thing I notice is that the suspension is a little bit stiffer than on something like a Passport or a Venza. Toyota and Honda generally have softer suspensions. Volkswagen is known for being a little bit sportier. Driving dynamics of the vehicles are usually a little more European, and with that you tend to get a slightly stiffer suspension. Some people like that. I actually kind of do like that. I can understand wanting something a little softer. There's 50. This thing gets Only 19 miles per gallon combined. That's pretty pitiful. And that would be fine if it made like 320 horsepower, right? But it only makes 276. So you've got somewhat underpowered engine, or an engine that's at least on the low end in terms of power compared to the competition. And it's pretty much the worst engine in this segment in terms of fuel economy. So this old 3.6 liter VR6 has been out since the mid 2000s, and it's just time to replace it. It's yeah, writing's on the wall here. It's pretty much obsolete. I have always liked Volkswagen's design philosophy of minimalism. This thing feels industrial. Some might call it stark. There's a lot of black surfaces in here. Some other automakers over-design things, I think, and VW has always taken a simplistic, minimalistic approach. Turn signals feel really nice to use. I know I already commented on the stock itself, but just the way that it clicks on, clicks off, the sound it makes, gives you the impression that you're driving a vehicle that is somewhat, just a little bit, just maybe 15% nicer than the competition. VW has always aligned with my philosophy on how cars should be in terms of ergonomics and design. As for the bad, there's a couple different things you can look at here. Volkswagen used to be a more European automaker. Obviously, they're headquartered in Wolfsburg, Germany, but they now have a production facility in Chattanooga, Tennessee, which is where this vehicle is built. It's where the Passat is built. It's where the three-row Atlas is built. In Tennessee, in addition to Pueblo, Mexico, is where it looks like all North American Volkswagen models will be built going forward. So any new vehicles they're adding to the US market will probably be built at one of those two facilities. And I've found in the past that vehicles built in those facilities do feel a little more American. Those, of course, are the vehicles they've designed for the US market, so they're a little bit decontented. There's evidence of some cost cutting compared to Volkswagens from 10 or 12 years ago that were more or less European cars designed for the European market and sold in the United States. So the feel of these modern US market Volkswagens is a little bit different than the European-built Volkswagens that you would get a decade or so ago. Compared to the other vehicles on the market today, I gotta say I really like this thing. A lot of it is personal preference, though. We do have to acknowledge the fact that Volkswagen's long-term reliability ratings aren't great. So, 4, 6, 10 years down the road, I don't expect this vehicle to have held up as well as something like a Toyota Highlander or a Honda Passport. But that said, we can't really evaluate that now. You can't look forward into the future. We can only look back at the past. And since that's been the case with a lot of Volkswagen products in the past, you have to think that, those issues might arise with this thing in the future. But as far as initial quality goes, Atlas is pretty nice here. So as far as this segment goes as a whole, I would count vehicles like the Honda Passport, Ford Edge, Nissan Murano, even the Jeep Grand Cherokee, the new Toyota Venza to a degree. Those are all this vehicle's intended competition. Those are all mid-size crossover SUVs that don't have a third row, and they all really try to embrace the fact that they don't have a third row by leaning into more of a sporty, performance, driver-focused vibe. For the most part, I guess it works. You do lose a little cargo area in this thing. I have to wonder if I were considering an Atlas or an Atlas Cross Sport, if I wouldn't just get the full-size Atlas just to have the third row. So altogether, I gotta give this thing a thumbs up. I think the selling points are that it's a little bit different from the norm, meaning Volkswagen's designs inside and out are a little bit different. There are a lot of delightful features throughout this cabin, a lot of stuff that's just a little bit nicer to use than it is in a Highlander, in an Edge, in a Passport, whatever. So for that reason, I think it'll appeal to people who want something a little bit different than the norm. And yeah, that's kind of where Volkswagen sits in the lineup today. So I think that sums up the Cross Sport here. Not a great powertrain, but in terms of design, this thing is pretty good. So thanks for watching.